Okay, now we're really starting assignment E. First thing we want to do, according to the handout, is pull up your work level 0 plan, existing arch plan. And there's our basement plan. I'm going to go ahead and change mine to shaded so you can see it in the back of the room a little better. And I'm going to go ahead and change the detail level to fine, even though that doesn't really change these walls at all. And we can play with that detail level as we go, because it will make columns look differently. So I think I'm going to put it back on course. We're going to create column grids, and then we're going to place columns at the column grids. The other thing that's getting in my way right now are these elevation markers. So I'm going to select one of those, and the shortcut to hide them all is VH, which is the same thing as going into Visibility Graphics, VG, and saying I want to find elevations under the annotation and uncheck them. VH,
If all my footings are showing up too, and not just the walls.
Are you in the work level 0 or are you in the top of footing view?
Existing arch, level 0.
So is it work L0, existing arch? No.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you go to the one that doesn't have, well, neither one of them show footings on mine. But that's okay. We're going to add footings in a little bit, and at that point you want to make sure you can see the footings. So I'm going to go ahead in my working view. Let's go ahead and do that. If you don't see footings at this point, edit your view range and drop that down to unlimited. That's the easiest way to do it, so then you do see the footings. I'm going to delete that little dimension.
Which one, the bottom one?
You have to drop the bottom and the view depth level both, because it'll get mad if you don't. Go down to the view range in the work L0 existing arch view and drop both of those to unlimited. That way you're looking down as deep as you can into the center of the earth, and you see footings and anything else that might be even deeper than that. So if there was like a storm sewer pipe, you'd see that too. Okay, so now we want to create column grids. So the column grid button is called grid in Revit. It doesn't have the word column grid in front of it, but it's a grid. It's the same thing. And you can find it in the Home tab. You would think it would be in Annotate, but it's not. So it's in Home and it's in Structure. So it's on the far right in Structure. So we'll do it from the Home tab first. And you'll notice there's a shortcut GR for grid. So if you like keyboard shortcuts, that's one you can use. Okay, so I'm in the grid command. Now notice the draw panel where we normally say what shape we're drawing has a very limited number of choices now, because you can't do a box shape, a rectangle of a column grid. It's got to be a straight line or a curved line. So now I'm going to draw my grid number 1 first. And if you look at the handout on page 2, no, that's still page 1. The one grid starts on the west and goes east a little ways. So I'm going to click right here to start, and then I'm going to click over there to finish. And it puts the bubble at the end that I clicked second. Now you can always change that, but it's better. It works better if you start at the end that you don't want to have a bubble on, and then you click to the end where there is a bubble. The way you would turn that off or on is you select the grid and see the little square checkbox. You can check it or uncheck it at either end. Which, if you remember when we were in an elevation view, is the same principle for levels. You could check and uncheck those boxes to show which end you have the head of the level at. So levels and grids are both datums. They behave very similarly. So once you figure out one of those two, you've pretty much got it down. Now I'm going to bump my scale down to 1/8 inch so that the bubbles look larger and you can see them better. Again, I'm only doing that in my working view. If I was doing a view that was going to go on a sheet at a certain scale, I wouldn't be jumping around from scale to scale like this. I do that just so I can kind of see things better temporarily. So now if I select that grid, I want to make another one south of it. So I could either select it and copy it, or I could go back to the grid button. If I go back, then I want to line up the first endpoint with that other one, and then I come over to there and click it down. Notice how it automatically increments it from 1 to 2. So for that reason, when I'm starting the grids in the other direction that'll be lettered, I normally don't do a whole bunch of them at once. I do the first one and I change it to A. Then if I had 12 others, they would come in as B, C, D, E, F, and so on. Now we only have 4 grids in the whole project because this is just a little bitty house, but it's enough to kind of show the concept. So I start with my A, I come down here, and it calls it 3. So instead of doing B right away, I'm going to escape out of that, click on it, and change the 3 to a capital A. And then, whether I do another grid from the button, or if I just copy that, either way, it's going to automatically make the next one a grid B. Now you'll notice that I haven't paid attention to where they're placed. I just got them roughly in the right spot. So then I'm going to use dimensions just like we've been doing with walls and doors and other things to get them in the right spot. Now remember, you want this string of dimensions, and I counted off just a little bit, a fraction of a point with some of you on assignment A, even though I didn't really pound that on the handout very clearly, but I want you to get in the habit when you do dimensions, DI, to always go as a continuous string and then drop it down. You don't want to come back and put in just one string from there to there and drop it down, and another string from there to there and drop it down, and another string from there to there and drop it down. That's the bad way of doing it, because then those strings could get messed up and overlap like that one just did.
If you did a continuous string and you needed to, like, say in the middle?
Yeah. Good question. If you want to modify a string, you select it and right-click and say Edit the Witness Lines. So then you can add to it, and if you want to delete one, just click on one that it's already attached to and that removes it. So I can add, remove, add. And once you click and you miss something, you don't click on top of anything, it finishes.
But yeah, let's say you finish it and you've got a continuous string of dimension lines in later. You still take like the straight middle one out?
Yeah, just select it and right-click again, Edit Witness Lines, and click it. The tricky part about editing witness lines is you think, okay, I'm done, I'll escape. Well, that throws away your changes. So this is the one time where escape is not a good idea. You have to click one more time in white space to finish. And you can do that as many times as you want now or later in the lifetime of that dimension string. I just selected the grid line, and when the text lit up, I clicked on it and I changed it from a 3 to an A. And after I did that one, then the next one came in as B automatically.
Will it reorder them if you had 10, like you put 10 between 1 and 3?
It's always going to go to the next number, incrementing from the last one. It's not smart enough to look where they are. It just says, okay, he created a 9 a minute ago, now this one's going to be 10, regardless of where you plop it. So, you know, and if I'd been messing around with this template and I had 20 grids in there and I deleted them all, and then you made your project out of it, it probably would have started with 21. So if it's ever the wrong number, just edit it once and then go on from there.
But before it started off the second.
Well, the only thing it's smart enough to know on levels is the fact that it's going to show you the elevation there. But this name, if I have a 3rd floor and I create another one down below the 1st floor, it's going to call it 4th floor just because, again, it increments. Now, it's not going to spell out 3rd, T-H-I-R-D, but if it says level 3, then it's going to make a level 4. It can only look at numbers. Okay, so I've got those dimensions in there. Now, I want 10 foot 4 north of that one. Now, here's a trick you can fall into, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to step into this trap so I can show you what not to do. If I change that to 10 foot 4 and hit enter, then I don't want to go back here and say, okay, now that one's 9 foot 4, because then I'm just pushing that same grid in the wrong space, in the wrong place again. So you have to do the first one, escape, and then go on to the next one and say, okay, now that dimension is 9 foot 4, so that you're moving the other grid line, not the one that you just moved. And when you get them in the right spots, it should add up 10, 4, 9, 4, 10, 4, which is a total of 30 feet, unless your walls aren't at 30 feet anymore. So I've mentioned before, I think, that I try not to count off on an assignment for something you did wrong in a previous assignment. But if you got something as grossly wrong as the overall width of the building, that's something you probably want to fix before we go on, because it'll come back to haunt you. And the other thing is sometimes you might not even realize that you flipped a wall. And when you do something like that, then it changes those dimensions inadvertently. So just be careful not to click on the wrong thing. These little control arrows can be a hazard to step in as well. Now I'm going to do another dimension string, DI, from face to grid to east face, and drop it down. And look at that. I just eyeballed those and they came in symmetrical. Revit doesn't like to just throw things in with odd fractions. So if you're doing orthogonal geometry and you just kind of rough it in there, it's going to pick fairly round numbers. Let's go to 15, 9 1/4 to A. And then B, well, I'll just do this side of B. That should be 15, 9 1/4 again. And again, if you've got 40 feet east to west, then that 8 foot 5 1/2. Now, here's a case, to go back to Brad's question about editing witness lines. I can select that, right-click and say Edit the witness lines, and now I can add. I forgot to pick up that center line, so if I click there, that picks that up.
What's the steps again?
You mean to modify the string?
Right.
You select it, and then you right-click and say Edit witness lines. And now you're in edit mode. So then you just go back and say, I want to remove that one, I want to remove that one, I want to add that. So anything you click on that doesn't have one, it'll remove it. If it's blue, then you know that's already got a tick mark on it, and you'll be removing if you click it. But don't forget at the last click to click in white space. Otherwise it throws that away. Now one kind of bad step I have you do here, by dimensioning to that reference plane, if this drawing is put on, this view is put on a sheet, normally the reference planes are hidden when you go to plot a sheet. That's one of the few things that you see on the screen but you don't see when you plot, unless you change this little setting in plotting. So that means whenever something doesn't show, when it plots, any dimension attached to that thing is going to go away. So if I do a preview here, I can go up to Print Preview. Well, I just lied. It's never done that before. It's actually showing those dimensions down here, even though it hid the they must have changed that in 2012. Yeah, well, what it did in the past is sometimes it would just drop out those two. It wouldn't merge them together and say that's 8 foot 5 1/2. It would just leave a gap there. And maybe they decided, somebody pointed out that that's really not a good thing to have happen, so they changed that behavior in 2012. They don't bother to tell me these things when they change things. They just fix them. Okay, so then notice how on the east and west endpoints of grid 1 and 2, I'm just going to stretch them so they cross over grid A. And the same for the end of grid A. I don't really need it to go all the way up into that back wing, so I'm going to stop it right about there. Now, there's one trick, and this could be a question on a quiz. By the way, I need to review the quizzes and make sure that anybody, like Christian mentioned, he had a couple answers that he answered and they got switched. If something wacky happens with a quiz, just let me know. And I'll trust you on your honor to explain, because occasionally quizzes do wacky things. But there might be a quiz question about how you turn on and off the bubbles at either end here, and how you stretch the endpoint locations. So if I say, okay, I want the A and the B to be further down here, if I select B, and I hover over that little circle and I grab it, notice how they both move together. And if you didn't want to do that, you could unlock the B, and so then it moves separately. So if I go to the first floor plan, because remember I'm down at level 0, if I go to work level 1, now those column grids show up the same way on this plan view. The only difference is right now I'm at a 1/4 inch scale, and on that one I was at 1/8. But the locations of the endpoints are the same in each plan view. Well, there's one more kind of trick to that. Let me close these extra views that I don't need here. When you select the grid line, it has an open circle on the bubble. and they'll lock back together if you line them up again. But notice how it says 3D in that little blue text? If you click on where it says 3D, it changes it to 2D. Now, I think 3D and 2D aren't really a good term for this. What it means is now I can move the location of that bubble endpoint independently in this view from the other plans. So if I pull up level 1 and I tile them side by side here, let me tile again, WTZA. Now that I've said this one is 2D, if I stretch it on the basement level plan, it doesn't change on the first floor plan because the first floor plan is still 3D setting. And if I go to the second floor, it's at the 3D setting also.
Hey, when I get my dimensioning between the parameters, the A, B, and the edge, automatically change it to equals.
Equal?
Yeah. Just on those outside dimensions. And then when I go to unequal, it says joining.
That's an interesting one.
Elements
Okay, this is what Christian had happen. Somewhere along the way when he was dimensioning these column grid lines, it recognized that that 15.9 1/4 was the same as that 15.9 1/4, and it chose to show them as equal, even though it wasn't constrained with this little equal constraint, because when you do that, all 4 of them would have to be equals. So normally when it's constrained, there's a property, instance property, the dimension that says equality display, either value or equality text. And so that's showing equal there, but for some reason it's not showing these two. I guess it will only do it. What's that?
Because you're going to a witness line.
Well,
That's why it doesn't make it equal, because it's irrelevant.
well, these two are equal to each other, and those two are equal to each other, but I guess it can't have 4 equals in one string that aren't all the
No,
same.
I'm trying to say they're not equal because your witness line is to
The grid?
not the grid line, the one in the center of the room, that line. So
Oh.
that's not part of the regular building.
That could be. It's a weird, no, because I think it won't be able to do that anyway. Like if I put a wall in here,
I'm sure if you put a wall there, it's probably,
well, it still won't be able to say equal because then it would be a lie, because they wouldn't really be equal to each other. I mean,
You wouldn't do that in a set of drawings anyway.
no. I don't even think this makes sense to have equal there because, okay, I can see that those two are equal to each other, but why would I want that? Because
okay.
I just don't agree that they've changed it that way.
Yeah.
It's weird. So if it ever happens to you, just select the dimension string and say, I want the equality display to just give the value. So that's kind of a heads up there. Okay, so let's, we've got our grids in there, and I just wanted to bring up that 2D, 3D thing. So let's say you've changed it to 2D and you've pulled it away. You can't click on the 2D to change it back to 3D. You have to take the, notice once you go to 2D, there's a solid dot there instead of the circle. The circle remains in the position where the 3D location is. So if I drag the dot back right on top of the circle and let go, then it's back to 3D. So for the purposes of this project, you can leave them all at 3D. But once you do a partial plan, it's going to cut them off and let you stretch them in, and then they have to be 2D because that partial plan is not going to match the overall plans. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording, and that'll be our column grids recording. This is session 5.